A made-up cheating husband? They say good things come in small packages, but a stick of dynamite is pretty small and one of those can ruin your whole day. Both of these things can be attributed to my wife, Betsy. At 5 feet tall and 105 pounds, she is definitely small. She looks great, cooks amazingly, is great in the bedroom, and spends 90% of her time pampering me. The other 10% is dynamite. Betsy has a short fuse, and when something pisses her off, she has to pay the price. And if I had known about that 10% and what she can be like when she's in that zone, I'm not sure I would have proposed to her. I guess the red hair was supposed to be a sign, but I didn't think of it at the time. I mean, when she loses her temper, she loses her temper. For example, I'm a regional manager for my company and I travel a lot, visiting 9 offices in my region. I do a lot of traveling, but I'm not usually around that much. I have a schedule set up where I am home most of the time. I fly out Sunday night, visit 3 or 4 offices, fly home on Wednesday, and am home for the rest of the week. The next week I stay home and then fly out on Sunday and repeat the process. But sometimes the schedule gets out of whack. I flew out on Sunday, visited 3 of my 4 upstate offices, and was at the 4th on Wednesday morning when the company's entire computer system went down. I was unable to fly out that day or the next and didn't get home until Friday afternoon. I showered, put on comfortable sweatpants, grabbed a beer, and sat down in front of the TV to relax and watch the Rockies play Arizona. Betsy got home from her job as office manager at 5:30. She came over, kissed me, and asked me to change so I could take her out to dinner. "Not tonight, honey. I just want to relax, have a couple beers, and watch the game." "That doesn't work for me, Rob. I've been home alone for a week now, and I need to get out somewhere." "I'll take you out tomorrow, honey. I've been eating at restaurants all week, and I'm tired of it. Just let me sit here and relax, and we'll figure something out tomorrow." "So you're choosing the TV over me. Fine, if that's the way you want it." She left the room and came back a minute or so later with a cast-iron skillet and launched it at the middle of the TV screen with a swing. Shards flew in all directions as the tube exploded, and Betsy turned to face me with a defiant look on her face and a "what are you going to do about it" attitude. I did the only thing I could do. I took a sip of my beer and said, "Looks like you're going to have to clean up after yourself." I was looking for an excuse to buy a new widescreen anyway. And I got up and went down to the basement where I had a workshop set up. I fiddled there until bedtime, and when I headed for the bedroom, I peeked into the living room and saw that Betsy hadn't cleaned up after herself yet. When I got to the bedroom, I saw that Betsy, who usually slept naked, had her pajamas on. This meant that she was in no sex mode until I could talk her into it. At least that's how Betsy could be when something pissed her off. Why did I put up with it? Because 90% of the time, Betsy was more than any man could ask for. But it was that 10% that got me into the position I found myself in. I was sitting at a desk in my home office, and on the desk in front of me lay my Colt 1911 A1 .45 caliber Colt. There was a round in the chamber, and I was watching the door to the office, waiting for it to open. The events that led to me sitting there watching the door had happened almost a month before, and I didn't even know it at the time. I had returned home from one of my trips, expecting to spend the rest of the week with Betsy, but upon my return home, Betsy treated me somewhat coolly. When I tried to take her in my arms and kiss her, she pulled away, said she wasn't feeling well, and headed for the bedroom. It went on like that for the rest of the week and all weekend. She pushed me away every time I tried to get closer and didn't respond when I asked her how I could help. This was not the Betsy I was used to. By Sunday, the situation hadn't changed. It was one of the rare occasions when I was gone 2 weeks in a row, and I didn't even get to kiss her goodbye as I left for the airport Sunday night. I pushed Betsy to the back of my mind and immersed myself in work, but Betsy returned every night when I got back to my hotel room. I called home every night to see how things were going, but even on the phone, Betsy was uncommunicative. I decided that when I got home, we would sit down and work it out, even if I had to sit on her so she wouldn't leave. Betsy wasn't home when I arrived late Wednesday night. She still wasn't home when I crawled into bed at 10:30. I woke up when she came into the house and slammed the front door, and glanced at the bedside clock and saw that it was well past midnight. She wasn't too quiet, which told me that she wanted me awake to know the time. I was sitting up in bed with the bedside lamp on when she walked into the bedroom. Upon seeing me, she gave me what I can only describe as a smirk. She didn't say a word as she undressed and put on her pajamas. She got into bed, rolled over to stand with her back to me, and said, "Turn off the light." She pressed the button and I said, "Turn it off yourself," and got out of bed, grabbed a pillow, and went into the guest bedroom. In the morning, I got up, showered, got dressed, and left the house without saying a word to Betsy. Usually, I made coffee, read the morning paper, and discussed the day ahead with Betsy, but not this time. I stopped at the Village Inn for breakfast, and then headed to the office. I didn't get much done that day because my brain was trying to make sense of what was going on with Betsy. Betsy wasn't home when I arrived, and she still wasn't home until bedtime. I decided to wait for her so I could figure out what was going on. She came home at 1 o'clock in the morning and was surprised to find me sitting on the couch, fully dressed, and waiting for her. Before she could utter a word, I pointed her to the chair across from the couch and said, "Sit down!" "I'm going to bed." "No, you're not. You're going to sit down and tell me what's behind your irritated attitude toward me for the last 2 weeks, and you're going to do it right now." She walked over and sat down. "Okay. If you want to speak your mind right now, that's fine with me. I was going to leave it alone until I calmed down or got even, but we can do it now. Are you unhappy with the way I treated you?" "God, Rob, that's too bad. But how am I supposed to act with a cheating asshole?" "What? A cheating bastard? Are you out of your mind?" "Yeah, Rob, that's right. Like I'm supposed to think you're going to admit it. Your denial means nothing, Rob, because I have 2 witnesses." "You have witnesses that say I cheated on you?" "You can't have witnesses because I've never cheated on you. I have never been unfaithful to you." "You're a good liar, Rob, and I'd almost believe you if Connie Morris hadn't seen you and her husband hadn't backed her up." "Well, you'll have to tell me about that, of course, because I have no idea what you're talking about." "Do you deny that on the trip before last you spent the night with some cheating woman?" "Of course I deny it. It never happened. I'll say it again, Betsy. I was never unfaithful to you." "Come on, Rob. Connie and her husband Daryl were in town visiting relatives, and they were in the hotel lobby when you walked in with that woman. They saw you laughing, they saw you get into the elevator together, and Connie heard the woman tell you she was in room 316, and Connie heard you tell that fool you'd be there in 15 minutes. So deny it all you want, Rob, but I know better." "You don't know anything, Betsy. That woman's name is Marcia Bollinger, and she's the manager of the Harpersville office. All 9 of my branch managers were in town that day for a joint meeting. Marcia was there with her husband, Frank, and yes, she gave me her room number, and I told her I'd be there in 15 minutes. I picked up some papers in my room and took them to her room and gave them to her, and then she and her husband went to dinner and I went back to my room and made my night call to you." "Oh yes, your night call. That's the call you make every night when you're out to make sure I'm home and not out like you. Rob, did it ever occur to you that there might be someone with me when you call?" "Oh ho, I can see by the look on your face that it never occurred to you. What's the matter, Rob? You think you're the only one who can play outside of marriage?" "Are you cheating on me?" "Not yet, Rob, but I'm working on it." "Is that where you've been the last 2 nights?" "That's right, dear hubby. I've been shopping. I just haven't found what I was looking for yet." I stood up and headed for the exit of the room. "Where are you going, Rob? You're the one who said you wanted to talk." "I already said everything I wanted to say. I've never cheated on you, but you don't believe me when I say that. There's no point in sitting here beating a dead horse." I went into the bedroom and started moving my things into the other bedroom, and Betsy came in and watched me. She didn't say a word, and neither did I. For the entire next week, Betsy and I stayed pretty much out of each other's way. I left on another trip and didn't bother to call home every night while I was gone. I got home on Wednesday. Betsy was home, but she didn't bother to acknowledge me, and I ignored her. Thursday at work, I began to seriously consider divorce. On Thursday, when I got home from work, I saw Betsy's car already parked in the driveway, and I thought about it. I almost always got home before she did. I walked into the house and saw Betsy sitting in the living room with 3 men. All 3 men stood up as I entered the room, and I noticed that all 3 were larger than me, taller and heavier. Betsy smiled at me and said, "Rob, this is Ben, Andre, and Jack." All 3 held out their hands to me and I shook them, and then Betsy said, "Ben is here to have sex with me, and Jack and Andre are here to watch how you behave." She stood up and said, "Okay, guys, let's take this to the bedroom." I threw Betsy a look of utter disgust and turned to leave. Jack and Andre grabbed me, turned me around, and led me into the bedroom. They held me between them while Betsy undressed Ben, and then Ben undressed Betsy. Betsy looked at me and smiled. "Nice. Really nice." Andre and Jack were watching Betsy and Ben, and the way I obediently allowed them to escort me into the room, and the meek way I stood and watched as Betsy and Ben undressed each other, made them let their guard down. They weren't expecting trouble, and why should they? They were all bigger than me, weren't they? My headbutt under Jack's chin stunned him enough that he released his grip, and I spun to my right and drove my knee into Andre's groin. As he started to drop to his knees, I spun back around and kicked Jack in the balls with all my might, and then used my legs to make sure the cleats stayed lying down. They lay on the floor and groaned as I faced Ben. He got ready to defend himself, and behind him, Betsy was on her knees with a look of horror on her face. I just looked at Ben and said, "If I fight you, I'm going to hurt you, and then you won't be able to give that worthless cheater what she wants. When you're done with her, take her with you when you leave." Turning my back on them, I went down to my home office, pulled out my gun, made sure there was a round in the chamber, put the gun on the desk in front of me, and waited for the 3 men to come for me. I heard them coming down the stairs, and then I heard the front door open and close. A minute later, the office door opened, and Betsy stepped inside and stopped. Ben was standing right behind her. "We need to talk, Rob." "Get out." "We didn't do anything, Rob. We weren't going to do anything. It was all just a show to make you feel some of what I felt when Connie told me about your cheating." "Get out, Betsy." "We didn't do anything, Rob. Tell him, Ben." "Hey, kid, we didn't do anything. Like she said, it was just a show. When we got naked, you were supposed to say, 'Please don't do this.' And then she was supposed to make you make some promises. See, Rob, we're even." "No, Betsy, we're not even. I told you I never cheated on you. It's not my fault you chose not to believe me." It was enough to call Marcia's husband, but you couldn't do something so simple. No, you didn't. Instead, you made my life miserable for almost a month. Well, Betsy, I've seen you naked on your knees with another man's man, so now it's my turn to disbelieve. After seeing how easily you undressed in front of 3 guys, I'll never believe you weren't going all the way. I'll never believe you didn't do anything on those nights you stayed up late, and I guess I'll always believe there's some truth to what you said about there being someone with you on those nights I called home. So just go away, Betsy. Get out." "No, Rob, I'm not leaving. We need to—" I raised my .45 caliber pistol, fired it into the doorframe next to her, and yelled, "Get out of here!" She screamed, and then she and Ben ran out of the house. I sat and stared at the splintered doorframe for a couple minutes. Then I went to the refrigerator, got a beer, and took the Colt to the garage where I took it apart and cleaned it. Then I went to bed. The next morning, I called work and said I would be out, then called a locksmith and started putting all of Betsy's things into garbage bags, which I then stacked in the driveway. It was past 11 o'clock, and the locksmith had just finished the job and left when the phone rang. It was Betsy. "Have you calmed down enough so we can sit down and talk?" "We should have talked right after your conversation with Connie and long before what you set up last night." "Please, Rob, we need to work this out." "It's settled, Betsy. I spoke my mind last night and I meant it. I'll never believe you weren't going all the way with Ben, and I'll never believe you didn't do anything on those nights you stayed up late. Nothing you can say will ever change that. Your stuff is in trash bags in the driveway. Anything left there when trash day comes will be thrown to the curb with the rest of the trash. Goodbye. On Monday, I went to a lawyer and filed for divorce, using irreconcilable differences as grounds. Not knowing where Betsy lived, I sent her to work. To this, Betsy replied, "How could you embarrass me like that?" and said, "I don't want a divorce, Rob. We can work things out." To which I replied, "No, we can't," and hung up. Betsy called me 3 or 4 times a week, and I hung up as soon as I heard her voice, and eventually the calls stopped. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I walked into Murphy's sports bar for a drink after work and saw Ben sitting alone in a booth. Curiosity took over, and since he was alone, I asked the waitress to get him a drink. When the waitress handed him his drink and then pointed at me, but he didn't get up and run away, I got up, walked over, and lowered myself into the seat across from him. He looked at me for a minute and said, "Are you bending me to something?" "No. I saw you sitting here and curiosity took over. Now that it's over, what was really supposed to happen that night?" He grinned and replied, "What was supposed to happen or what was really supposed to happen?" "Like I said, it's over with. Tell me everything." "She paid the 3 of us $100 each to do what she told you. She was going to take my dignity in her hand, look at you and ask you if she should continue or if you'd rather she didn't. Then she was going to say something like it was up to you whether she did it or not, and then make you promise that you wouldn't cheat on her again. You were supposed to be shocked and promise her anything, and then she would tell you that you should take a good hard look because next time she would really do it. Then she would tell us all that she didn't need us, but kept our phone numbers just in case. Then the 3 of us had to get dressed and leave." You say that's what she thought was going to happen, but what really happened? What was really supposed to happen? Are you lying to me? I'm naked. She's naked and gorgeous, and she has my tool in her hand. What do you think was supposed to happen? All 3 of you? Did she want it or not? What if she had screamed about using it and called the police? Too many witnesses in the bar who heard her offer us $100 each to go home with her, and most never heard the story of what we were supposed to do for the money. Didn't it bother you that it might have ruined the marriage she said she was trying to save? Seriously. One of 2 things had to happen, and you know it as well as I do. If you were any kind of man, you would have left as soon as her clothes hit the floor and she knelt down in front of me. It didn't matter if she and I had sex or not. You were past it. It would be different if you were a wuss and said, "Yeah, doll, whatever you want." If you were a wuss, then our having sex with her wouldn't matter. You'd still have said yes when it was over, and she asked you if you'd learned your lesson. How did she get involved with you in the first place? She came here 3 or 4 nights. A pretty woman like that gets hit on a lot, but she didn't fall for anyone as far as I know. I think she liked my looks or my demeanor when I took my shot. She refused, but then offered me $100 if I would agree to her trick. When I said I agreed, she asked if I could find a couple guys big enough to run you. I guess I wasn't too successful at that. Thanks for the information, I said, getting up to leave. One more thing, he said as I stood up. I wouldn't come here for drinks if I were you. Jack and Andre are usually here, and I think they'd like to meet you again. They didn't expect trouble last time, and they'll be ready next time. Thanks for the warning. But just for a laugh and a smirk, you can tell Jack and Andre that I'll be ready to meet them if I see them again. They don't have any wench. They were in my house doing something they shouldn't be doing. See ya. And I left the bar and headed home. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.